So since most of you guys have done a placement of the joint, there's one important concept regarding the joint that you guys need to be aware of. What we call the local orientation axis of the joint. This is very little bit confusing if you do not know what I'm talking about. So I will try to explain that today and try to explain it over every assignment because we will be doing that every assignment, okay? It's called the orientation. So what it means is every joint that you create, it will come with a hidden local axis point within that object. Actually, every object that you create, it's going to have its own local rotation axis point within it. It's normally hidden, so you don't get to see it. So in many situations, you don't have to deal with those kind of stuff, but when you're doing a rigging, you do have to make the orientation is properly set up. So let's take a look at that aspect. So right now, you don't see any joint here. You don't see any local orientation, everything looks fine. I'm just going to quickly hide the polygon here. So you only get to see the joint here. Okay? Now, one more tip. If you find your joint size either too small or too big, then you can always go to display, animation, and joint size. This is a little window that allows you to scale the size of the joint. Now, just be aware, this size of the joint it's not going to be actually technically affect how you rig. It's not going to affect your body. It's not real actual scale that you see on the channel box here. Just think of that as just kind of visually there for you to see it easily, okay? So the Maya will treat this, doesn't matter how big that you make it on this joint display window here, you're gonna have the Maya act exactly and pretend like the joint has not been scaled at all, okay? So you can always increase that here to make it really big, or make it small as you like. So just find the right size that you find it most comfortable with to working with, okay? Alright, so that being said, let's take a look at that local orientation axis. So when you select this joint, there's one more thing that I want to make sure that you guys fully understand. So when you select the joint on the bottom, it is actually selecting the joint on top of the hierarchy here, right? If you select this one on the bottom. And everything is highlighted. So this is a little tricky here. Many people assume that I just select the entire joint, right? But that's not true. It kind of nicely shows that on the outliner. When you look at the outliner, only the top joint of the hierarchy is being selected. Okay? You gotta have the fully aware. As for the joint, this is something that you have to watch out for. Okay? Because many times, sometimes you will have to select the entire joint hierarchy, every joint within the hierarchy. If you want to do it, you have to make sure you have everything highlighted like this one. Okay? As you can see, it looks different. If you just select that one here, it looks like everything selected, but the reality is you only select the top joint, one joint only. Okay? So let's be just be careful with that one. So you can actually select the entire joint like this, or you select the top joint here, like this, left button. Now it's selected only one. But if you hold down the right mouse button, and the fifth one from the menu, it's called select the hierarchy. If you actually select that, it will automatically select in every joint that's existing within that hierarchy system. Okay? Make sure that you do that. Next thing you do is I'm gonna go to a display, transform display, and then select local rotation axis. Click on it. Now you finally see that actual axis on each of the joint. Now you will see that what you should be looking at when you're looking at this kind of local orientation axis now is you have to make all of the axes are exactly aligned and pointing at the same direction. What I mean by that is you have to make it consistent. At this point, if you're looking at that here, the join here, the y is pointing to the left, right? But on top here, the y is actually pointing upward, and z is pointing to the left. That is already inconsistent here, that we do need to make it consistent and make them all same, okay? So that's what we're going to do. So I'm gonna select it again. Used to be when I was learning Maya, I had to do it manually, and then writing some kind of crazy script to actually rotate that manually. It's kind of crazy and never like that, but now the Maya has actual tool to automate that process. It will make things a lot easier for you. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to skeleton, and then the fourth one from the top called a orient join. Okay, don't click on it, but click on that option window to open up the option window. Now, so as I said earlier, our purpose of orienting join is to make them all consistent and same throughout. So you can add for this, so you have to identify what is going to be the primary axis that you want to use it. It's going to be either X, Y, or Z. You can pick any axis. As I said earlier, there's no right answer that which axis is going to be need to be primary. It's largely depending on, for example, like you want to create a character rig for a game engine, like Unity, right? In that case, you will have to make sure that your primary axis is Y, because that's how they actually set up their character on there. So it's always a good idea to keep that shit consistent that way. So, but if it's not just for using for animation for Maya, you can use X or Z. Y doesn't really matter, okay? But once again, the main thing is once you set the primary axis as, for example, as X, then you have to make sure that primary axis always be X for the rest of the joint. Okay? Now I'm gonna set that, for example, I'm gonna say it as Y. Let's keep it as Y, as primary. I like to keep that as primary Y. What that primary axis refer to is if you set that up, the Y axis that you have on here will be actually pointing to the next joint that's connected to. Okay? That's what the primary axis is. Okay? So set that one as Y. Now the secondary axis is think of it as more of the supporting axis that help you to reorient the joint. So if you set your primary as Y, your secondary needs to be either X or Z, right? Because Y is already being used for the primary, right? So you have to use either X or Z. In my case, I'm going to use the Z axis for now. Now the third option here is secondary axis world orientation. What it means is Maya is asking you which direction do you want your secondary axis to be pointing at. Okay? Now it could say X, Y, Z plus and minus. That's the option. Okay? Now, how do we know which direction is what axis is what direction, right? But if you're thinking about what you have learned so far, usually Y plus means going up. That means it's pointing upward. The Y negative means it's pointing downward. If you set it as X positive, it's normally moved to the pointing to the right side from your end. It's a negative X means it's pointing to the left side from your end. The Z axis pointing forward plus, Z axis negative is behind. So what he said is I want a primary, let me just recap that. The primary axis I set that as Y, so the Y axis will be always pointing to the next joint. Secondary axis need to be axis other than the axis you pick for a primary, which was Y. So it has to be X or Z. I picked Z, you can pick X, that's fine, but I pick as Z for now, as an example, okay? Now the third one is you have to identify which direction that your secondary axis, which is Z, to be pointing at. In my case, I want to have my Z axis pointing to the left side from my view, which is equal to negative X, right? So I'm going to set that one as X and set that one as negative. Now let's see what happens. Now something changed. Axis will change. But as I explained to you, now the y-axis is starting to pointing to the next joint, right? You can see that right here. And as I said earlier, z-axis, the secondary axis, is pointing to the left, which is negative x. And all of the joint is now actually properly oriented, except for this joint here, which is and this one here, this three of joint. These three joints are actually not behaving the way you want it because it's regarded as the end joint. And the end joint is the one on the bottom of the hierarchy and does not have any joint that connect next to. So Maya does not know what to do with that particular joint. So what do we need to do? Because at this joint it's more placeholder, right? As I said, so I don't really care about that one. So I'm only gonna looking at this one and this one. I want to keep that as exactly same as the rest of it. So all you need to do for the end joint, if you want to orient that properly, is simply select those end joint, which is the two of them, the bottom of the hierarchy, and then this time toggle on join, orient joint to word. Okay, and then hit apply again. Now you see that? Not exactly the way I want it, exactly. So probably it's because the way it's being set up. So what I'm going to do here is maybe if I add it and unparent it first and then do that again, then now, no, we don't get it. So what I'm going to do, this is end join, so once again, doesn't really matter too much, but yeah, so in that case, I want to make sure that this is the case, so I want to put it on here. I guess it should be fine this way, the way it's kind of set up. Yeah, I'm tempted to just move on with that instead of trying to fix that up because it's not going to make a much difference. What's more important is these join here, they are consistent. And end join can be work around it however you want it. I want to have it set up this way, like this. Yeah, like this. So that they are all consistent, right? Oh no. Like this, right? So that x-axis is always pointing downward and doing that. I think it's mostly because of that. If you're doing this one, you're actually doing it properly. So I'm here. And if I do it again by connecting that, so don't worry about that the finger part because it's not super important for the orientation, but more of this main joint, they are more important. So I'm gonna leave it as they are. You guys don't have to worry about it as they are. I'm gonna just connect it back again. Alright, so it's good. So now we got all the orientation of the joint setup. Now all you need to do is hide them again because you don't want to see it again. So I'm going to select the joint, right mouse button, and then select hierarchy to select all of the joint from the outliner. Or you can just do that same thing. Drag and select them. And then go back to display, transform display, and select local rotation axis again to hide it back out. Okay. And then I'm going to bring back the polygon. So that's pretty much all you need to do for the joint placement. Okay. I'll try to go over there again if you have any question about it. That being said, it's right now it's 3:43 right now. So why don't we take a quick 10-minute break, okay? And we're gonna resume our class at the 5 to 4. So it'll be 3:55, okay?